Welcome everyone to today's webinar, The Data Clinicians Need, How Sentara Healthcare Empowers Providers with Right Data at the Right Time. I'm Emily Rapley with Becker's Hospital Review. We will begin today's webinar with a presentation and we'll have time at the end of the hour for a question and answer session. You can submit questions throughout the webinar by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your screen. We look forward to hearing your questions. Today's session is being recorded and will be available after the event. You can use the same link you used to log into today's webinar to access the recording. At this time, it is now my pleasure to start today's webinar by introducing our presenter. Chris Pointer is an information technology architect with 20 years of experience. His passion is striving to implement standards in order to introduce automated processes for repetitive tasks. With the core philosophy of keeping technology out of the way, his focus is to advance the end user's workflow and productivity while ensuring the technology that's driving the change is transparent. Chris holds a degree in computer science from Old Dominion University as well as multiple certifications. Having worked in all areas of information technology, his zeal is unquestionably in the end user computing space, helping impact what drives all of IT, the end user. At this time, I'm pleased to turn the floor over to Chris to begin today's presentation.
Thank you for that introduction. I'm Chris Pointer. Today it's my pleasure to talk to you about one of my passions, and that's using technology to give people what they need while minimizing the time sink and aggravation technology can sometimes bring. During this presentation, we will discuss how Sentara Healthcare eased the technological burden on providers by removing the need for repetitive logins, using complex passwords throughout the provider's workday, streamlining clinical workflows across shared endpoints in the clinical workspace, making the technological aspects of a provider's time more efficient and thus improving patient outcomes, and easing the time cost to the providers to ensure HIPAA and regulatory compliance. I find that typically with talks like this, a lot of the value comes from the Q&A period, so please feel free to ask those at the end. Sentara Healthcare is a not-for-profit health system spanning Virginia and Northeast North Carolina. It has a long history of service to the community and is well known in the industry for being innovative with its use of technology to aid the patient care process. With 12 hospital campuses and hundreds of locations spread across the region, Sentara has a wide breadth of services it offers to the community to fulfill its mission to improve health every day. For more than a decade, Sentara has ranked as one of the top integrated health systems in the nation. That journey began in 2007 when Sentara embraced the changing world of electronic health data and began to roll out Epic to help bring a single EMR platform to the organization. Today, eCare, that's Sentara's Epic implementation, services 10,000 concurrent sessions across all of its facilities. And Sentara continues to integrate new modules of Epic into all of the business and clinical lines, most recently beginning the rollout of Prelude and Resolute for billing and registration. Along with that, in 2012, Sentara came to possess licenses of Imprivata OneSign through a hospital system acquisition and began its journey with Imprivata as a partner in the SSO space. 2017 saw Sentara make the decision to leave Citrix behind and undergo a migration from Citrix XenApp to VMware Horizon for the clinical access or client access portion of the Epic platform. From the outset of the Epic implementation, one thing became clear very quickly: the need to authenticate to a workstation and then to the Epic application itself when a provider walked up to a computer was a time-consuming task. Second thing that became apparent was that security compliance was becoming endangered by staff leaving workstations unsecured during those brief absences due to the time it took to type in a complex password. This shortcutting was a symptom of the length of time it took to provide credentials. The number one issue with the help desk during this early adoption period was access to the applications, which is to say providers were having problems with their credentials. These struggles introduced distractions during patient encounters. Sentara began to search for a way to maintain vigilance of securing workstations and application sessions, but still allow for that ease of access. This was seen as a necessity for improving clinician satisfaction. The business also sought a way to remove the technology distractions and trouble calls associated with all of these authentication events. Tackling the issue and simplifying logins has been a long-standing problem that required multiple evolutions in technology. And it's an area of technology that you never completely solve, but constantly improve upon. Sentara saw drastic improvement in its implementation of Epic following the deployment of OneSign. The acquisition of OneSign licenses led to the implementation of tap-and-go access, that is, tapping a badge on a badge reader and tapping to leave. Success there in this implementation led to the implementation of the Imprivata connector for Epic to extend that tap-and-go authentication to the Epic application session itself. Eventually, we reached the point of integrating OneSign and VMware Horizon together to get to where we are today, which is 15-second access to the EHR for a brand new session and nearly instant access to an existing session. The end results of this implementation have been hugely successful in simplifying the authentication workflow and provider satisfaction has dramatically increased while simultaneously driving down trouble tickets. In preparation for this talk, I took a random sampling of a few dozen users and classified them into three categories: doctor, nurse, and ancillary clinical worker. To make some assumptions, it takes roughly 30 seconds for the average person to sit down, control, delete, enter their credentials. And taking that into account, we were seeing that providers were spending upwards of 57 minutes a day providing their credentials. That's not seeing a patient. That's simply sitting down and typing username and password. By introducing OneSign, we were able to drive that number down to just a few minutes a day, giving that time back to the providers, which in turn they gave back to their patients. Sentara uses a 6-hour grace period in its implementation of OneSign, and that's to say that providers are asked for their password along with their badge tap every 6 hours. This ensures providers are asked roughly twice per shift to manually provide their passwords while also meeting the requirements of the information security teams. It's easy to say that in any implementation things are going to improve, but real-world analysis of data such as this helps put that improvement into tangible, measurable numbers. Once you start multiplying those time savings out at scale, you quickly see the value in the solution in both the fiscal and patient care sense. As Sentara's Epic implementation went forward, we noticed the need to provide just-in-time access to the EHR in high-traffic clinical areas. This access would greatly improve provider productivity and satisfaction while also allowing critical access to patient data in times of need. The challenge is maintaining a compliant security posture while also allowing nearly instant access to your EHR. After all, you can't have a machine sitting there in an open area logged in where just anyone can walk up and access it. These shared endpoints have long been a thorn in the side of our security teams, and the business needed a solid approach to providing these shared endpoints while still meeting those security requirements. Over many, many iterations of this concept, Sentara developed a kiosk workstation approach to provide for this by utilizing OneSign and Horizon. These kiosk machines fall into two main categories: Windows endpoints running Windows 10 and HP Thin clients running the Thin Pro OS. Both of these kiosk machine flavors are configured to do the following. They will boot up on first start and log in as a unique user tied directly to that machine and then lock. That machine is now sitting there waiting at a secured state for an authorized user to badge in. A provider can simply walk up to this point and tap their badge and be presented with a desktop immediately and an open session of Epic authenticated as themselves. That Epic session is running in VMware Horizon. Once this provider has performed their task, made their notes, did what they needed to do, and they're getting ready to walk away from the machine, simply tapping it will secure the Epic session and secure the workstation and make it ready for the next user. These configurations are especially popular in the emergency departments at the hospitals, as well as areas that use ambulatory workflows where you have multiple users using the same machine and they want to get in and get out. The simple act of badging while walking up to or away from a computer has been a resounding success in replacing a standard control, delete, unlock scenario. As we discussed with the previous goals, the central focus is improving patient care. Everything goes back to getting providers to the tools they need when they need them and keeping technology from getting in the way. Digging into these areas or into these issues, you quickly see how interconnected they are. By simplifying logins and access models, you can see that clinical workflows become more efficient, and along with that, patient outcomes improve. By removing the obstacles of authentication delay, you can also begin to redesign your clinical workflows with one less constriction. Sentara also saw the need to remove the computer interaction from the first few moments of an encounter and put the focus on the patient. Patients very much enjoy coming in to the doctor's office and seeing the doctor first or the nurse first instead of having them nose down in the computer trying to get logged in. By turning that first technological step of the encounter into a simple tap, Sentara saw immediate benefit with the provider-patient relationship. Sentara has gone on to fully implement OneSign at 3 of our hospital campuses and across all of its medical groups. It is so ingrained in these workflows and the culture at these sites that any notice of change to the workflow or an upgrade to the OneSign product generates a flood of questions from the user base, just trying to validate that we can execute this change quickly and make sure that they are still able to use the badging software OneSign. I've recently gotten word from hospital executives around the other facilities that they have been submitting project requests and plan to roll out badge readers and OneSign at their facilities. The feedback is always positive, and the patients, the providers, and the business all benefit from this streamlining of the patient encounter. That drive to utilize OneSign is a direct result of staff transfers and word of mouth from sites and facilities that are already using OneSign in their workflows. Last but not least are regulatory concerns. We've talked about the streamlining of patient care, but just as important is ensuring that the data and those tool sets are secure. A provider's focus is always on patient care, so as technologists, it's our duty to provide an approach to security that meshes well with their primary concern. Sentara identifies the need to allow for securing data quickly and also a need to audit that access. Automation is also a core component to Sentara's strategy for controlling access. OneSign and Horizon dovetail nicely to give Sentara the compliance policies they needed. The ease of use ensures providers always secure their EHR sessions when walking away from workstations. If there is ever a concern about a breach of access, the logging provided by OneSign is making the auditing of relevant data easy and reliable. Investigations into breaches that used to take days to put together relevant data can now be accomplished in minutes. This is something I've accomplished firsthand. Hearing complaints of somebody accessing a record they shouldn't have, being able to really track down what exactly was going on that computer has been a huge time saver and also a huge benefit for understanding exactly what went on versus what was recalled to have gone on. Sentara has seen great value in this combination of Epic with OneSign and Horizon. Each step along the path has increased the value we provide to our patients and staff, culminating in the user experience available to them today. Everything we've discussed boils down to 2 major gains: giving providers time back to spend in patient care and allowing them to see more patients, and increasing the compliance and security of the enterprise. It's not often that you see a pervasive demand for a technology solution, but Sentara has seen that in its use of OneSign and Horizon to present Epic to our clinical staff. Now, as I said, I'm here for questions. I find that this is the best use of our time together, having what ifs and maybe some problems you might be facing. So I will turn it back over.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris, for that fantastic presentation. So we will now begin our question and answer session. As a quick reminder to our audience, you can submit any questions you have by typing them into the Q&A box you see on your dashboard. And we will try to get through as many questions as we have time for today. So with that, we can go ahead and get started. Chris, it looks like our first question here asks, what have been the primary barriers to full deployment of this solution? Was it financial, resources, training, or something else?
I would say the primary concern is just having enough bandwidth in the IT organization to be able to get those out there. There is a training aspect from the provider side. It's a big change. The facilities that Sentara already has running on OneSign already had OneSign running at some level. They were smaller deployments, and they went wide to the entire hospital. But there was already some institutional knowledge there on how to use tap and go systems. It's not difficult. It's very easy to train the providers, but getting that time in front of them to get that out there and training them is part of the delay. Also, just getting the IT staff the ability to get badge readers on all of the workstations, getting the software out there, those are the holdups. But what we're seeing from the Sentara side is that the hospital administration is pushing for it. So this is something that will happen sooner rather than later.
Absolutely. Thank you. That was a great question. Our next question here is about KPIs. So we have an audience member who asks, what are some of the KPIs you have focused on to ultimately deliver improved patient outcomes?
So as an IT employee, as a technologist, we don't see what the provider groups are seeing, what they talk about internally about their KPIs. I can say that we see the login times that we get. We see that drop dramatically. And we hear in implementation meetings that the providers are loving just the ability to get into their workstation without having to type anything in. It's something that's reliable. There are very, very few failures in that realm. So taking that distraction out of the equation allows those users, those providers, to get to their Epic session without complication. So as a technologist, I don't get the clinical indicators that we're seeing, patient outcomes improve. We just hear it from the provider staff in their group meetings, in their team meetings.
Absolutely. So getting that positive feedback from providers is really kind of your KPI from the IT perspective. Excellent.
And I'll add that
so
anytime you get a positive about some piece of technology, kind of across the board, that really says something about that technology. As technologists, we typically hear the negative. So when we hear kind of an overwhelming desire, an overwhelming need for something, that really should rise to the top of your radar.
Absolutely. Excellent. Well, thank you, Chris. Our next question here is about various roles and job descriptions for driving change. So this question is, based on your breadth and depth of experience, what roles or job descriptions tend to be most critical to driving change in health IT?
So I would say it's really at the provider level. As in healthcare IT, we're there to make sure that those people that are in front of the patient are, exposed to the tools that they need. We're there to make their workflows more efficient. Anything we can do to help them while still following, the requirements that are set forth to us, security, things of that nature, privacy. we find that getting that honest feedback from a provider about what they need, what they expect, things that we could improve upon, that is the key to improving that provider technology kind of experience. One key issue that, I think it's everywhere in IT, and that's getting that feedback. You never hear about something that's broken until it's been broken for 3 months and everyone is just frustrated and can't stand it anymore. And it's less of a, I need you to fix it, and more of a, I'm so frustrated, I just need to vent to somebody. But we in IT are here 24/7 to resolve those kinds of issues. So the sooner we find out about those problems, the better off it is. And quite honestly, a lot of times we see pockets of failure. So you might think that you're the only one having a problem, but there might be 30 or 40 other sites that are feeling the same way. And until that kind of rises up to the level of reporting, those issues don't get resolved. So that's something I always preach when I go out and talk to a provider. Hey, if you're having a problem, let somebody know. We don't say that you're whining. We don't say that you're complaining. That's what we're here for. But we can't fix what we don't know is broken.
Absolutely. That's a great point. Well, it looks like we have a handful of questions here about kind of the more technical aspects of this. So the first one is this OneSign process only effective on Epic? If your facilities have different software for financial, clinical, et cetera, does this system work as well?
Yes. So you can train OneSign for all manner of credentialing. Our number one use case is Epic, but we have other applications that are trained with credentials. So it works the same way. You badge in, it provides those credentials to that application, and then you're in the application. It's SSO in its purest form. Some of the other niceties that you get are you can do some procedural code with OneSign, so you can have some things execute on badges or on lock. If you want to run some kind of script or command, we in our early implementation of Epic on our kiosk machines, we ran into an issue with Nuance Dragon. So with the Imprivata connector for Epic, your session in Epic via Horizon is secured, but your session for Dragon is not. That is a standalone product that is not controlled by the connector for Epic. So what we found was that at these auto log-on workstations, at these kiosk workstations, when a provider would have Dragon up and secure and walk away, when the next provider came in, they were seeing Dragon logged in as somebody else. And that was quickly identified in testing and was obviously a major issue. So the way we resolved it was writing some procedure code that simply shut down Dragon when a new login came on. Now that is a kind of a distinction that's important to note, because Imprivata OneSign will let you tell if it's somebody unlocking a workstation that they were previously on or if it's a new login. So what we wanted to do was make sure that if the provider maybe went to go to the restroom, they badged to secure, and they came back to the same machine, we didn't want to kill their Dragon session if it was the same provider. We only wanted to destroy that session when it was a new provider, a new person, so we didn't expose that data.
Perfect. Thank you. So as a follow-up to that, can you talk a little bit about how well Epic, VMware, and Imprivata products integrated, and whether that was seamless or required a little bit of work on your end, and if you can also speak to what the maintenance looks like as each of those companies updates their solutions.
Yeah, I'd be glad to. So Sentara Healthcare was one of the first companies running Epic on Horizon in a large scale. And with that came a couple of hiccups in our early deployment. We had some issues, I will not lie. We found some small hiccups with login speeds, with compatibility, and luckily we have two great vendors in VMware and Imprivata, and we were able to start getting engineering to engineering calls with them along with Sentara to discuss those issues and work through them. And we quickly got through those issues. And what we found in this whole process was that there was a chance for a relationship to be built there. So what we see in today, when we get a Horizon upgrade or a OneSign upgrade, we know that that has been fully tested and number of iterations of testing with both companies. So we have seen these hiccups, these issues be one and dones. We don't see them anymore. We don't uncover any kind of major outages anymore, any more major issues. And that's something that's a testament to both companies, and they're working together to help us succeed as a healthcare provider. Now, as far as upgrades, occasionally we will patch OneSign. I would say maybe once every 6 months, we will run a patch on OneSign just to get up to the highest supportive level. Very rare is it that we find an issue internally that is addressed by a hot fix. So we keep that going as kind of just a maintenance, just keeping up with the latest. And along with Horizon, we treat our Horizon environment with the utmost respect. It runs our EMR. It has a ton of users using it daily. So that's something that we're slow to change. And when we do change it, we like to try and stay on the extended branches, the extended service branch of Horizon. So we want to make sure that we have that support for that long period of time. And what we'll do is we'll run our POC, our lab environment. We'll get that upgraded with the latest version of Horizon, put our OneSign product on there as well, install Epic, and then get that tested by our validation team, who will run through every single clinical workflow to make sure no issues are found. Along with that typically comes a Horizon client upgrade, so we will also test that. So we upgrade Horizon, I would say, roughly every 6 months to a year. If there's not a need, if there's not an issue we're trying to address with a hot patch or a version upgrade.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for walking us through that. I know you mentioned this when we spoke a little bit about the Dragon being up on a workstation and a nurse or a physician might walk away, but we do have a few other questions about this. So can you clarify what happens when a doctor or nurse forgets to badge out?
So if a nurse or a provider forgets to badge out, it's treated as if they just walked away. Depending on what policies you have set, if you have a lock time on the workstation at Sentara, I believe it's 15 minutes. So that machine, without any input, will lock itself in 15 minutes. But for that 15 minutes, that session and that workstation is at risk. It is exposed. That's why we treat that securing very tightly. That's why we started to look at deploying OneSign in the first place, was to nip that in the bud. At this point, with this level of technology and this ease of use, there's no excuse for walking away from a workstation, and we treat that as a security event and an HR issue.
That makes a lot of sense. So similarly, how much of a threat is badge sharing? Is that a realistic threat, and how would you go about preventing and monitoring that?
So I have only heard of badge sharing happening once, and it was due to a lost badge. An employee showed up for work and lost their badge, and two of them got together and decided that they were going to, share a badge. And I can tell you that became an HR issue, and I believe, that was handled at the HR level. That's not something we see very often. We have the ability to replace badges rather quickly. Every hospital has a physical security office where they can get their badging done. And keep in mind that these badges are also the building access badges. So it's kind of all in one, right? So typically, and I've done it myself, you get out of the car, you walk up to the building, you can't get in. Turn around, go back to the car, get your badge. If you don't have your badge, then you're going to have to call for an escort and go get a new badge. Once you have that new badge, you can enroll it in OneSign pretty easily. All you have to do is find a workstation. Typically, the security office will do this for you and enroll your credentials and associate them with your badge. So as far as badge sharing goes, because it's so easy to get a new badge, that doesn't typically happen very much anymore. And with your typical screen locking policies. That's how you handle walked away workstations.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. So in a related question here, does security enroll each employee for their badge, or is that something that's under the purview of IT? Can you walk us through what the process was like in the beginning when each of your employees needed to enroll for a badge?
Yeah, so for a new rollout, typically we have enrollment parties where a nurse manager may get all of their staff together, or a provider team may get all of their staff together, and they will all go through the enrollment process together. The only thing you need for enrolling a badge is access to a workstation with the Imprivata OneSign agent on it. It's pretty self-explanatory. I do a lot of testing with mine, so I'm forever unenrolling and re-enrolling it, and it is less than a 15-second process. So typically for rollouts, that's how we handle that. For new employees, so a new nurse is on the floor, that nurse will work with their manager, and they will sit down and just go through the process one time. We do have cases where people will call the help desk. They lost their badge got broken, and they've received a new one, and they just need a little assistance in getting logged in. Any workstation that they can control, alt, delete, and type their password in is one that they can enroll their badge in. And so that's typically how that's handled.
Perfect. Thank you for clarifying that. Can you speak a little bit about using this from home? Is this something that can be used from home after hours or on weekends?
Yes, that technology, that part of the technology is there. That's not something that Sentara has rolled out at this point. We have been mostly focused on-premises access, but OneSign does have a cloud component and a mobile component, so that you can use your personal device or a corporate device for doing that login. But again, that's not something Sentara's approached yet, so that's not something I have a lot of experience with.
Perfect. Thanks for clarifying there. Can you speak to any current efforts that might be underway to reduce physician burden associated with the daily EHR use?
Yeah, so this is a big one, and this is one of those things that, when we rolled out Epic on Horizon, it probably was in the lab for 9 months before we had the first person test it. And in that 9 months, the vast majority of my time was to try and minimize login, length of time. We wanted to make sure we were around 12 to 15 seconds. On a good day, we can get down to 9. So that's something that we're always cognizant of. We just want to make the life of the provider, the life of the nurse, as easy as possible. And if that's something we can do by taking away delay, then that's something we're going to tackle. There are some technologies that are upcoming that we're excited for, and that is proximity aware is something that's coming to OneSign. That is a Bluetooth connection to a phone that can have the provider maybe log in when they walk into a room. So there's no more badging. They just simply walk into a patient room and they can start authenticating and have a session waiting for them. Those are things that we will definitely, work on. We're running a POC currently just to see how that looks and how that works. And then, we'll give that to our PAG, which is our group of providers, our physicians, and see what they think of that and see if that's something that they think will help the burnout factor, because that's really who we depend on to tell us what we can do to help. And they're not afraid to tell us either.
I'm sure they're not. Excellent. I think that proximity aware capability sounds like something that clinicians would like. So we have another question here about integration. We have an audience member who asks, would integration be impacted if the health system is on numerous Epic instances?
I don't believe so. Typically, your Imprivata appliance, your OneSign appliance, is where your connector is doing that work. So that's something you would definitely just have to work through with support. But I don't see anything, apparent that would cause an issue. And That is just with the Epic connector for Imprivata. I believe, if you're talking about other EMRs, I believe that there is integration there as well. Obviously, we don't have experience with that because we're an Epic shop, but that's something I would definitely bring up with Imprivata and see what they have to help in that regard.
Absolutely. So just a couple more questions here. These are more Sentara specific. But Chris, can you speak to how you're leveraging FHIR in your organization?
Can you say that again? Was it FHIR?
FHIR.
I'm not really sure what's being discussed there.
Okay, we'll go ahead and move to the next one then. So as one of the pioneers in telehealth and virtual health, what were some of the most critical steps taken to ensure success, and what were your biggest challenges?
So some of the biggest challenges is always just data consistency and getting everybody's idea of what a workflow is down. I think a lot of the struggle is always surrounding that, getting all the right players together, getting all the right teams together, because as we consolidated down and we're consuming ancillary systems into Epic, just making sure that every use case is provided for is always the thing that delays a project. We might get down the road to implementation and then we find out something was forgotten. So we want to halt to make sure we're good there. So I think the discovery process, the kind of the chartering of a project is the most important. You have to set your expectations, up front, and you have to stick to those. Scope creep is a horrible problem in IT. I think everyone is aware of that. But it also is important to make sure that you're covering everything. You can't, when it comes to healthcare IT, you can't put together I'm sorry, I just lost my train of thought. Healthcare IT, you always have to remember that you're dealing with people's lives. So you can't put out a partial solution. You want to make sure you have that full solution out there.
Absolutely. So we have one last question here. At Sentara, do you make the distinction between a health IT implementation and adoption? And if so, could you describe what that distinction is?
I'd say I could see where that would be a distinction. So with implementation, that is the clinical, the IT clinical teams and the infrastructure teams rolling out all the necessities for that app, that EMR, that system to work. And adoption is having those providers, those nurses, that ancillary staff member really effectively using it. And I can see where there is a distinction there. I have heard complaints from the application teams that, they rolled out a whiz-bang new feature and they're not really seeing it be utilized. But some of the time we forget as IT, people don't do what they don't know how to do. Or if they think there's a better way that hasn't been addressed, they might ignore what the garden path you're trying to give them. And so I think what has helped Sentara get through those implementation struggles and those adoption struggles is by having on-site training and having, regular group meetings to figure out what's going right, what's going wrong, and are there any better ideas on how to do this? Is there something that we can change? Nothing's ever perfect and we're always evolving. That's something you can't ever rest and be stagnant. Evolution is a requirement. So getting those clinical workflows and those system workflows, getting those always evolving to meet the customer's needs, the end user's needs, is of the utmost importance. And that's how you're going to drive your adoption rates.
Absolutely. So those are all the questions we have today. Chris, before we wrap up, do you have any final thoughts you'd like to share with our audience?
No, I just want to thank everyone for their time. I hope it was helpful for you, and I hope that just hearing what Sentara has done might help other organizations. We're all one big healthcare family, and I think that getting together and sharing these experiences is, critical to our industry.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Chris, for your presentation, and thank you to Imprivata for sponsoring today's webinar. To our audience, please enjoy the rest of your day, and we look forward to having you join us for future webinars.